Okay, so we're all trying to figure out this whole wealth thing, right? And Robert Kiyosaki, Mr. Rich Dad, Poor Dad himself, he's kind of a legend for actually doing it. Went from $800,000 in the hole to owning thousands of properties.
Yeah, he really flipped the script.
Big time. It's a total financial comeback story, and that's what we're digging into today, some of Kiyosaki's strategies.
Right on. And the thing is, he wasn't handed anything on a silver platter. Kiyosaki started from square one, just like a lot of our listeners probably did. We're breaking down this video where he lays out his steps, not just for getting rid of debt, but for building that wealth over time, step by step.
Exactly, and this isn't some generic financial advice. We're tailoring this deep dive for you guys, our listeners. You're here for what actually works, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
We're cutting through all that noise, getting to the good stuff, the actionable stuff.
So what's really interesting is Kiyosaki, he's all about mindset just as much as the actual steps. It's not just about crunching numbers. It's about becoming the kind of person who can handle wealth,
Oh, totally. Like you could win the lottery tomorrow, but
Exactly.
if you don't know what to do with that.
That's right.
Okay, so get this. Kiyosaki was cruising around in a Mercedes, but he was totally broke. Talk about faking it till you make it.
Yeah, talk about appearances being deceiving, huh? It shows how easy it can be to look successful even when you're struggling. So it makes you wonder, how honest are we being with ourselves about our own finances?
Right. It's easier to ignore it than to actually face it.
It's a perfect example for Kiyosaki's first principle, honesty. He had to come clean with his wife, Kim, about all the debt. Even financial gurus have to face the music sometimes. But by tackling the problem head on, that's how he started to turn things around.
Wow, I never thought about it like that, just admitting it to yourself, even when it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But it makes sense, right? It's like that saying, you need to know where you are to figure out where you're going. So how does this whole honesty thing, how does that actually work when you need to dig out of debt? What are the actual steps?
Kiyosaki, he breaks it down simple, really actionable. First thing might seem obvious, but it trips most people up. Stop taking on new debt. He and his wife, Kim, they were serious about it. Living in a basement apartment, even with that fancy car.
Wow.
It just shows that even small sacrifices, short term, can make a huge difference in the long run.
It's like hitting the brakes on that debt train, cutting up those credit cards, resisting those impulse buys. It's about breaking free from that cycle.
Exactly.
But it's one thing to say it,
Right.
and another thing to do it.
Yeah.
Did Kiyosaki have any, specific tactics for stopping that debt from piling up?
He was all about facing your financial demons head on, no running from it. He said, write down every single debt. Doesn't matter how small or who you owe. He even included what he owed friends and family. And it wasn't just about getting organized. It was about taking away the power those debts had, just looming in the back of his mind.
Right, like just getting it all out in the open.
Exactly.
It's like turning on the lights when you're scared of the dark.
Exactly, yeah.
Suddenly it's not so scary anymore. Okay, so we're being brutally honest. We've stopped adding to the debt, and we've written it all down. What's the next play in Kiyosaki's book? It gets interesting here, right?
It does, yeah. This is where he might throw you for a loop. He says hire an accountant.
Really?
Now, I know what you're thinking. You're in debt. How can you afford that? But this is where Kiyosaki's experience, it really teaches us something. He realized that even though it seemed counterintuitive, having an expert in his corner, even for a bit, was worth its weight in gold.
So it's like investing in some expert advice to get back on track, right?
Yeah.
Like having a personal trainer, but for your finances.
Exactly.
Someone to help you navigate all the confusing stuff and make those informed decisions.
Yeah, because they can help you find where you can save, point out tax advantages you might not know about, and basically just make sure you're taking the smartest approach possible. Think of it as an investment in your financial future.
Okay, so let's say you've got your financial plan together. You've got a clear picture of your debt, maybe even got yourself an accountant. What's next? How do you actually start tackling those debts?
So Kiyosaki's next step is all about making it visual.
Okay.
He's a big believer in getting those debts out of your head and into the real world. Think spreadsheets, charts, even a list on a whiteboard, whatever works. Anything that lets you actually see what you're dealing with.
Right, because otherwise it's just like this abstract thing.
Exactly.
Debt can feel so abstract, just numbers on a statement, but when you can visualize it, you can actually see yourself chipping away at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Did Kiyosaki have a specific method for actually tackling those debts once they were all, visualized?
He did. And this might surprise some people. Instead of going for the debt with the highest interest rate first, which is what you usually hear, Kiyosaki says start with the smallest debt.
Really?
regardless of the interest rate.
Huh. I've always heard the opposite. Why start small? Seems kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah, it does on the surface, but Kiyosaki, he's all about building momentum, you know? Those quick wins, when you knock out a small debt quickly, you get that feeling of accomplishment. It's like, hey, I can do this.
Right.
It's incredibly motivating, and it keeps you from getting bogged down by those bigger debts.
Oh, so it's like a psychological thing almost.
Ex-
You're kind of tricking your brain into staying motivated, which,
Mm.
let's face it, that's half the battle, right?
Exactly. It's like hacking your brain's reward system.
Yeah.
Each small debt you pay off, it's like checking off a box, and that feeling of progress just fuels you to keep going.
Okay.
Now, remember, Kiyosaki's thing isn't just about getting out of debt, it's about building wealth, and that's where it gets really interesting.
Okay, so you've slain the debt dragon, you're feeling good, you've got some momentum. Now what? What's the secret sauce? What's the key to building that wealth, according to Kiyosaki?
It boils down to one big shift, focusing on assets over liabilities. Remember how we talked about Kiyosaki living in a basement apartment even though he was driving a Mercedes? Well,
Yeah.
that Mercedes. Total liability, something that takes money out of your pocket.
Right.
But he also bought a small condo around the same time.
Uh-huh.
And that condo, that was an asset.
Okay, hold on. I need a little clarity here. What makes something an asset versus a liability?
It's pretty simple, really. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out.
Okay.
Think about it like this. That condo Kiyosaki bought, he rented it out. The rent payments covered his mortgage and then some, put extra cash in his pocket every month. That's an asset working for him.
So it's not just about owning things. It's about owning things that generate income.
Exactly.
Now that spare bedroom is looking a lot different. That parking space I never used.
There you go. You're getting it. That's the mindset shift Kiyosaki's talking about. It's about making your money work for you for once.
This is where that aha moment hits you, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about making more money. It's about making smarter choices with what you've got.
Exactly.
But how do you go from, say, renting out a condo to, like, real substantial wealth?
That's where his snowball analogy comes in.
Yeah.
He used the income from his assets, like that condo, to get more assets. So maybe he buys another rental property or invests in a business, right? Each asset is adding to his income stream, which then lets him get even more assets, and on it goes.
So it's all about being strategic about how you're reinvesting,
Exactly.
using the income from your assets to basically create this upward spiral of wealth.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. But it also sounds like it takes time. Did Kiyosaki say how long it took him to actually reach financial freedom using these principles?
He did. Kiyosaki and his wife Kim, they reached financial freedom in about 10 years. Now, I know that might seem like a long time,
Sure.
but it's important to remember they weren't just sitting around waiting for the money to show up, you know?
Right. They were making moves, putting in the work.
Exactly. They were actively managing their money, getting those assets, building that snowball. It wasn't about luck. It was about consistency, effort, and making those smart choices over time.
And I think that's something people forget sometimes. It's not magic. It's about consistent action.
Exactly. And that brings us to another key part of Kiyosaki's philosophy that often gets overlooked: personal growth.
Okay, now we've been talking about finances, debt, assets. How does personal growth fit into all of this?
Well, Kiyosaki talks a lot about being prepared for wealth. And he's not just talking about having money in the bank. He's talking about developing the mental and emotional, even spiritual maturity to handle wealth responsibly and ethically.
So it's like, it's not enough to just have money. You need the wisdom and the character to actually use it well.
Right, exactly. Otherwise, it can be more of a curse than a blessing, you know? It's like that saying, more money, more problems.
Right.
If you're not prepared internally, wealth can actually magnify any problems you've already got or even create new ones. Kiyosaki stresses things like financial literacy, self-discipline, a strong sense of purpose.
It makes sense, though. If you don't understand how money works, if you're impulsive or you don't really have a vision for your life, then yeah, suddenly coming into a bunch of wealth could be
A disaster.
exactly.
Yeah. Kiyosaki's approach, it recognizes that true wealth, it's about more than just your bank account, you know? It's about aligning your financial goals with your values, using your resources to live a life of purpose.
So it's not just about becoming wealthy. It's about becoming the kind of person who can handle wealth. That's huge. It's like
Exactly.
they say, right? Money doesn't change you.
Yeah.
It just shows you who you really are, like turned up to 10. So we're not just talking about getting rich here. It's about becoming the kind of person who's ready for it, you know, who can handle it. That really makes you think.
It really does, yeah. And it gets to the core of what Kiyosaki's saying, you know? True wealth isn't just about stacking up cash, it's about personal growth and actually living a life you love, a fulfilling life.
It's like that whole thing, money can't buy happiness. But it's more than that, right? It's about recognizing that financial success and personal development,
Hmm.
they're connected. You've got to have both. And we've covered a lot of ground today, from facing those financial fears to the power of assets to the importance of personal growth. Kiyosaki's approach is about way more than just dollars and cents. So for our listeners, what would you say is the biggest takeaway from all of this?
That's a good question. I think the most important thing to remember is that this whole thing, achieving financial freedom and building wealth, it's a journey. It's not like you reach the finish line and you're done.
Right.
It takes constant learning, adapting, and really questioning what you think you know about money.
Yeah, it's about changing your whole mindset, right?
Right.
From, I can't afford that to, how can I make that happen?
Exactly.
It's about grabbing control of your finances and creating a life that actually means something.
Exactly. And don't forget, Kiyosaki's story, it's just one example. Your journey, it's going to be totally unique, and that's totally fine. The key is to take those first steps, be consistent, and never stop learning.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Robert Kiyosaki's strategies, the thing that really sticks with me is this. It's not just about becoming financially free, it's about becoming the best version of yourself along the way. And that kind of leaves me with a question for everyone listening. What areas of your life could use a little bit of this holistic approach? Something to think about as you're creating your own path to financial well-being.